If you'd like to understand more about how to get a job in motorsport, this seminar is for you. The following focuses on helping students, graduates and anyone interested in the motorsport industry to find rewarding jobs. Our guest is Todd Jack Hooker, who has over 8 years experience in recruitment with 6 years specifically in Formula 1, where he served as the head of talent for Williams F1. During the seminar, we cover how to discover your true motivation, how to prepare for opportunities, how to build a network in motorsport, and how to make the most out of interviews. And if you're looking for a job in the motorsport industry, whether that's marketing, engineering, design, fitting or testing, check out hundreds of motorsport jobs on fluidjobs.com by Driver61.
We're really going to dig into the discovery. So whenever I coach people or whenever I interview people, so a lot of experience interviewing people coming into Formula One, a big thing for me is actually understanding what is someone's why. So you might be going, what do you mean by this, Todd? So what I mean is, what is your motivation for doing this? You know, what people want to work in motorsports, but what is the burning desire? You know, what if you're an engineer, was it because you used to take apart toasters when you were younger and you're fascinated about how they work? So for me, you know, you understanding as a candidate, knowing your why is really important, especially when you apply for roles and when you go for interviews. Because if you understand what you're trying to get out and what your reason for doing what you do is, it really helps during the process. So I want you to have a little think about what is your why. You know, it's something that I use all the time in my recruitment. And then also, you know, what motivates you? Is it that you want to learn lots? Is it that you want to earn lots? You know, really, really have a clear view in your mind what you want that to be. You know, do you understand that you're going to have to do 5 years of a low-level graduate role before you get into the role that you want? So you understand your trajectory. And then also, finally, what are your non-negotiables? So for me, my non-negotiables would be working in a team that's honest. So my expectation is working in a HR team or a recruitment team where everyone is honest to me, you know, where I'm able to be creative and I'm allowed a bit of autonomy. So you knowing your non-negotiables really help when you go into an interview process or when you're looking for roles. An actual trick that I use with a lot of the clients that I coach is, you know, have a hit list of companies. Know your non-negotiables and know what companies you want to work for. You know, you could do like these are companies I'd love to work for. These are companies that I might want to work for. And these are companies that I definitely would not want to work for. Again, you're not going to know whether they fully align with your non-negotiables till we have interviews and conversations, but it's good to have that in your mind. So just something to think about. Again, you know, you understanding yourself is really important during the process. Sorry, Scott.
I just wanted to just jump in and ask a question. I'll be the first one to ask a question, if that's okay, everyone. Sorry. I've got the microphone. When you speak about asking candidates what their why is, what their motivation is, at what stage are you asking that question? Is that pre-interview by email or something, or is that during the interview, or like how does that conversation kind of happen? Or are you just saying that everyone should, you know, well, this is true, they should know their why, they should know their motivation, but are you actually asking that in the interviews?
Sometimes I do ask that. I would usually ask it in a more, it would be a more sugar-coated way in terms of like, what are you doing in your outside work to better yourself? You know, are you going to the gym? Are you reading books? Are you, you know, what is it? I think ultimately when someone asks your hobbies and interests, what they're actually asking is, how does your brain work? How do you want to better yourself or live your life?
Yes.
So if you know, recruiters or HR people or hiring managers are asking about hobbies and interests, sometimes they've got a bit of an angle of, they're not just asking about what football team you support, they're asking about how you spend your time, how your brain works. So I think some people would not ask this during a process, but I think it's good for you to know, because then you know that you're being true to yourself when you apply for a role.
Well, I suppose that just speaks to applying for roles that you are genuinely passionate about and
Sure.
interested right? It
Yeah.
had like we're just hiring a graphic artist for our video content, and we asked them to talk about Formula One basically, and you can just tell in the way that someone's explaining something whether they're a genuine fan or whether they've just Googled something and are giving you a fact, right? So it's one of those things where I don't think you can't cheat the system. You have to actually be passionate about the thing that you're going for.
100%, 100%. Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. And actually, I guess another point to that is, remember, if you're applying for a Formula One or motorsports job, remember that there should be more dimensions to your personality. I've coached a lot of people over the years that would say their three hobbies and interests would be Formula One, the F1 game, and go-karting. And then I'm like, what? But I understand that you love the sport and that's why you're applying for a role, but tell me about you. I want to know how your brain, do you like bubble baths? Do you like walking your dog down the beach? That stuff's really, really interesting to me. Maybe not the bubble baths example, but yeah, I think, again, knowing your non-negotiables is super important. It's something that I probably didn't know till I was about 32 years old. And now I know, going into a job, what I'm looking for and what type of people I want to surround myself with. So hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, again, it might not come up in the process. It might just be that you need to understand. And I think for you to be authentic during the process, I think it's something that you should definitely think about. Let's jump onto the next slide, if that's cool. So, how do you prepare to get into motorsports? What a broad question. And look, when I sat down to do these slides, I could have done slides for, I reckon we could have done 4 or 5 hours on this. But I think ultimately, it depends in what field you want to be in. So, for example, I think there's lots and lots of information on the internet about, if you want to go into an engineering career, you're going to need to go down the academic route. So there are certain roles that the non-negotiable and requirement of the role would be for you to have a mechanical design engineer role degree. But certain roles, if we're looking at social media, if there's anyone that's looking finance or HR on this call within that motorsports world, you working for a similar company or having exposure within motorsports, a lower formula, is going to be your best bet. So I find when I recruit for a role, and this is a bit of a top tip, I'm not looking for someone that's done the role before. What I'm doing is looking for someone that would be able to adapt to the environment that I'm recruiting for. So what I mean is, if you've had experience working in a similar team, whether it's you've had work experience for a Formula 2 team, or you've done some Le Mans stuff, whatever it might be, you've had a bit of exposure, you sort of understand what it's like to be in that environment, really, really helps you. So I think there's certain roles you have to go and get the grades, get good grades, get a year in placement if you're able to do that. If not, work for a company that's similar, maybe a automotive supplier that makes parts. There's lots of them. You don't necessarily have to have a year in placement to then get a design engineer graduate position, or work for big companies that are trying to achieve the same sort of goals. So when I think of finance, there's massive finance companies that you can go and work with that people would then, you'd be able to utilize your skills within the motorsports world. And then in terms of what you should expect, I think I allude to this on a later slide, but I think it's really, really knowing that that's what you want to do. And I think a lot of, there's 750 odd people on this call. You're really passionate about getting into motorsports, but again, just know that that's something you want to do, and you're going to have to give a lot of blood and sweat and tears to get into that world. So work hard, whatever it is, the field that you're working within. Work really hard, put yourself out there, get the experience, utilize lots of experiences that you're able to get your hands on.
Sorry to cut in there. So, like you're saying, I guess with anything, right? You need to build up. It's like any kind of networking or building a business or anything like that, you've got to start kind of, unfortunately, towards the bottom, maybe a lower job in a championship that isn't necessarily Formula One,
Yeah.
and then get some experience there, and eventually you'll be able to kind of work your way up, build and expand your network, and hopefully, if you are looking for a job in Formula One, and some people aren't, right, because they don't want the traveling, but yeah, build your way up the ladder.
Absolutely. I think I say it to so many people, whether it's that I'm interviewing or coaching, you have to earn your stripes. And sometimes it's hard because people don't give the stripes away for free. So, you need to sort of put yourself in situations where you're doing a lot of volunteering. There's I know there's lots of lower formula teams that would happily have people volunteer at race weekends, So again, it's putting yourself out there. It's getting the hands-on experience on your CV. I think it's great, people studying and spending lots of time at university. But ultimately, if I'm recruiting for a role, what I want to know is someone going to go in and utilize that? Are they going to be able to deal with the stakeholders and the pace that the company's working at? So by you having hands-on experience, that gives you that competitive edge.
Fantastic. And we've got a question here actually that I'll just repeat from Zara. She's asking about what the best way to find work experience in the motorsport industry is. Do you have any particular advice around that? Like where do we, if we're starting, young and kind of not worked in motorsport before, where do we go?
So I guess it depends. If you're a school leaver, there are work experience programs. There's an orange team. I'm not going to say their name, and there is a blue team that do really great, great work experience programs where you're able to go in and experience different departments. If you're at a college level or if you're at a university level, I think then it's speaking to the lower formulas and just saying, look, can I come and do some work experience? You're either going to get ignored, a no or a yes, right? So either way, you're putting yourself out there. So I think that's really important. There's lots of lower formulas. There's lots of even like people doing stuff in karting. Again, I said I did make a bit of a joke of it. Shouldn't be one of your free hobbies, but actually people that go and marshal at karting events, or they're working at repairing karts that go on a kart track. That's great because it's hands-on mechanical. And something I would say, if there's any budding sort of design engineers within a bunch of people, for a design engineer to have a hands-on mechanical experience is pretty rare. And I think it's really, really good. The fact that you would understand how the parts work together that you design is going to set you apart from the rest. So again, any type of work experience like that. And then a lot of people also shy away from, like, if you've got a job in a shop or if you've done some bar work, putting it on your CV, them soft skills are really, really great as well. So don't be afraid of saying you had a part-time job in a shop during studying university. It's not going to show weakness. I think it would actually show some great soft skills. And then again, in my mind, I'd be like, okay, they could adapt to this environment.
I've got a quick 2-minute story if you guys can listen to me. So I think it points out quite well how stuck in you need to get if you don't have the opportunity right in front of you. So when I was racing, when I was 21, we were racing in the UK, and there was this guy who would just come to some of the races, and we didn't know him, and he just hung around the garage, right? Hung around, and you think it's a bit weird at the beginning, but over time, he got more and more involved with the team, right? He was a nice guy. He wasn't trained in any kind of specific way. In fact, he was a carpet cleaner, right? And he hung around, and in the end, the team manager said, we're racing in Europe in a couple of weeks. Do you want to come along with us? You can wash the wheels, you can clean the floor, you can help put the awning up. And he came with us, said yes straight away, took some time off his normal job and came out. Anyway, to kind of cut this down a little bit, eventually he became a mechanic on that team. And these were like Formula 3000 cars, quick cars. Years after that, he ended up being a mechanic on a Le Mans car, did the 24 hours, like, and now he works in a race workshop full time. And I think it just goes to show that if you are able to get to a racetrack and get involved and kind of, eventually break your way into a team, this is the kind of dedication that some people have, and it's kind of inspirational, really. This bloke's still my mate, right? It's been, 18, 20 years. He's still my mate, and yeah. So yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily need the degree, you don't necessarily need the contacts, but you do need to be willing to go to a racetrack, go to a race team, get stuck in, do some outreach, do something out of the ordinary to make yourself noticed, and eventually the opportunity will come.
I think there's a real power in just putting yourself in situations where you have to network, which we'll talk about. Yeah. So that's a great example, right? Of someone just going, okay, I'm going to put myself in this situation because I want to be surrounded by these cool people. Then he becomes one of the cool people, and then he steps up. So yeah, absolutely. Get exposure if you can, and if you can't, smash down the doors and make yourself. Yeah, we're not saying just go and hang around lots of racetracks, but I think what we're actually saying is, go and put yourself out there. I think there's a real power in that. Completely agree, Scott, mate.
That was just a legal kind of disclaimer. That was advice from me, not Todd. Okay, the professional HR expert.
I feel like it's quite a worrying place to hang around. I'm sure with like the cars.
In the end, we just gave up and said, you know what, come and join us. It's
get out of the way of the track and just come and join us, just for health and safety. Yeah, maybe that's what happened. Amazing. Let's jump onto the next slide. So yeah, perfect segue into this. So networking. So the importance of networking. So any role that I've ever had in my very short recruitment career, and I'm the first to admit that, is the power of networking is huge. I think it's so important to put yourself out there. So if you know someone at a team, or if you know someone within the Formula One, take them out for a drink, pick their brain. People love to talk about what they're passionate about. If there's anyone in your network, ask them about what they do. If you have a neighbor that's a design engineer, say, can I come around and cut your grass, and you can tell me about, your career for half hour. So I think putting yourself in them networks, and people you should network with, any like-minded people. So I'm really, I really, really love LinkedIn, as does Scott, and in terms of like connecting with like-minded people. So LinkedIn's great, but I think you probably will have in your friends and family network people that that do the job. Pull some favors, see if you can have a chat with these people, see what they did, what university degree they studied, what companies they worked for before. I think there is a way to go about networking, and I've made a point of sort of talking around boundaries. So turning up at people's doors or turning up at the gates of a Formula One team might not be the best way to do it. And trust me, I've seen it done. And you don't want your name to be on the radar for the bad reason. You don't want people to know of you because of a bad reason. But I think if you ask people from a kind place and say, look, can I pick your brains about what you've done and how you've done it? People will, 9 times out of 10, be kind with their time. So fling people messages on LinkedIn and say, look, I noticed you went to this university. I'm thinking about going there. Can I pick your brain for 10 minutes and see whether it's worth me doing that course? That type of interaction, I think, is really, really good. And that's something that I would encourage.
I have a little point on this, Todd, if you don't mind me jumping in again. But so we have so much reach across the channels and the website now that we have a ton of people reach out to us, and I imagine this is what it's like, even multiplied more for the F1 teams. They must have people just sending in stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So my advice around this is to actually do some pre-work and actually deliver them some value straight away in that initial email or outreach. So first of all, you've got to identify what you're going after and do outreach, right? But don't just make it a templated email to the 50 companies or teams that you like. Actually really focus in on the ones that you do like. Maybe don't go straight for Formula One. And Todd, you can kind of advise on that, but they must get so much inbound to them. If you came to Driver 61 saying, "Oh, I'm looking for some work experience, can you help?" Like we get 100 of those a week, right? And I do appreciate them, but there's no way that we can get back to them. But if you came to us and said, "Oh, we're looking, I'm interested in social media around motorsport, and I actually have re-edited one of your videos. What do you think about this?" You're
Yep.
showing me your value straight away, and it's much easier for me to process whether you're ready for a role like this or not, and you're adding value to it from the get-go.
It's amazing that. Yeah. So if you listen to the two statements that Scott's just said, right? One's, can you help me? The second one is, here's how I can help you. And I think that's the power of networking, right? It's like, here's the carrot. You know, I've had a go at editing one of your videos because I don't feel like the edit was correct. And let me know your feedback. There's almost a hook in there. I'm not saying everyone on this call should read it. Scott's amazing videos again, but like I think that's interesting. And you know what? And I also have lots and lots of messages. But if someone says, "Look, I noticed you did that post, and actually I don't really understand what you meant," or "I think you should have phrased it this way based on my experience," I interact because I find that interesting. So I think doing the homework around when you network with someone, especially on LinkedIn, what type of things are they liking? Who are they posting on? Are they putting out content that you could latch onto and maybe build some rapport with that network request that you send them? So again, I think it's making it bespoke. Don't send out lots of mail mergers, as Scott said. Don't send out lots of generic, because you're not going to get stuff back. Make it really bespoke. Working at a Formula One team, I had lots of branded CVs that would come through with the wrong team on, and obviously that's very off-putting. And it happens more often than not because people are so focused on putting out lots of volume rather than very bespoke invitations or questions, rather than actually focusing on the detail. So there's a massive the devil's in the detail there. So yeah, completely agree with that point, Scott.
Absolutely. I think like on that same point, if you have a certain amount of time where you are approaching teams, companies, whatever it is in the motorsport industry, take that time and be super focused rather
Yep.
than trying to hit 500 companies. Because it's all of these teams are getting lots of inbound like this. So really focus and try to understand how you can stand out and connect with that person properly rather than just a blanket email.
Completely. And I guess that another little gem for this would be around, if you are interviewing for a motorsports company and you know someone in that company, make sure that person gives you a bit of a lowdown on the culture. If that person that you know within that company already, if they're able to give you some internal leverage, is also really good. So as an internal recruiter, I would have people come to see me and say, "Oh, you're interviewing so-and-so that's my neighbor. They're really great." It has a bit of clout internally. So if you know people within the motorsports world, when you're interviewing, also use that as leverage. Ask them to go and speak to the recruiter or HR person. That will really, really help. A lot of people don't do that. Good people know good people. So it's always good for that recommendation loop to keep happening. Yeah, good stuff. Let's jump onto the next slide, if that's okay. Amazing. So opportunities available. So again, I did think about listing out lots, but there's so many. So I think ultimately what you want to do is put job alerts for any companies that you're looking at. So whether it's Formula One teams, lower formulas, or just motorsports in general, put job alerts on. So on most career pages, you have the ability to sign up for updates, or there might be newsletters on the careers page. You can also on job boards set job alerts for certain companies or keywords that allows you to have an email that will send you the highlights of what's on there. So that's a really, really good tip. I think what you want to do is make sure you're up to date with all of the careers pages. And yeah, just keep looking at the opportunities. Most opportunities, I'd say probably 95% of roles are always advertised. So there's very rarely roles that are just made and then people will go into them. Sometimes there are internal moves and stuff, but most roles are advertised and they're public domain. So just make sure that that public domain is something I would say is when you're looking for a job, it sometimes feels like a full-time job. So I find if I'm doing any admin like that, I have to go and sit in a coffee shop and sit there for an hour and be very regimented with my time and almost treat it as a work hour where you're going through the websites, checking what you want, checking the reviews, checking whether you know anyone internally. But yeah, I think job alerts and staying up to date with newsletters would be really, really good for companies. Not much else to say on that, but there's lots of opportunities. I think there's probably going to be lots of questions around early careers that we'll cover off at the end.
I've got one here actually that
Okay.
probably slides in pretty well, Todd, because I've seen it, I don't know, 10, 15 times already in the messages as I'm scanning through them. There's a question around if you're not from the UK or a kind of European country,
Yeah.
is there any advice around that? Particularly, we've got quite a few mechanical engineers,
Yep.
you know, based out of India, based out of, you know, non-EU countries.
Yep.
What's the advice there?
That's a great question, and I can see why a lot of people ask that question. So something I would say is, due to Brexit, the world become very small, and I've said that a few times now, and hopefully I can explain what I mean by that. So before Brexit happened, before we moved apart from the EU, even if F1 team wanted someone, a French mechanic or a German mechanic, there was no visa because there's freedom of movement around Europe, right? So once Brexit happened, even if a French or German mechanic wants to move to the UK, a visa sponsorship would need to happen. What that means is the world just gets really smaller, because whether you get someone from Germany or you get someone from America or Asia, it's still the same cost for a visa. So actually, unless they're coming from the UK, you still have to get a visa. So you know, within the Formula One world, especially in my experience, you know, you're looking at about 60-70% of them type of roles were always visa sponsorship. So there's budgets for it. There's companies that they work with, external providers that help with the visa sponsorship. So I would never see it as a barrier to entry. I'd actually say Brexit probably helped that situation, because yeah, the talent is Europe and beyond.
Fantastic. Okay, that's encouraging for a lot of the people who are asking that question. And their application is just the same, right? They find they find the job listings, and then that they should apply for it. And you know, from what you were saying there, it seems like it doesn't have a huge impact on the likeliness of them getting the role, them being abroad, because they'll be sponsored to come to the UK.
Completely. I think something I would say is the watch out of this is make sure that you know that you're pitching yourself around the right salary. The conversion does not always sit great. And also something I would say is, you know, on your CVs, if you're talking about GPAs, for example, convert it to the English university levels, because most people reading the CV wouldn't know what a GPA is and what the conversion is. But then, yeah, if we go back to visas, jumping with a little gem there, but with the visas, you know, be really transparent and open. You know, if it asks about right to work in the UK, don't worry about saying no, I don't have the right and I need a sponsorship. A lot of people during that, because sometimes there's pre-questions in an application process, make sure you're being really honest on that. You know, that's never going to be a knockout question. It wouldn't harm you, or you wouldn't be knocked out from the process.
That's interesting, actually, but it makes perfect sense, especially for the F1 teams, right? I suppose if you're going for a small club team, then maybe it's different. But for the F1 teams, they want the best of the best. They don't care where where that staff member's coming from, and they're willing to help them relocate to get a role if they're kind of up to the level that they require.
Again, if you've got great experience and you've got a proven track record of putting yourself in situations and being successful in them situations, whatever they are, why would the team not want you? You'd be an asset to them. So I think as long as you've earned your stripes, as we were saying earlier, I can't see that being a barrier of entry. I think it's great. I've worked with some amazing people that have had visa sponsorship in the past, so I wouldn't worry about that. I know it's quite daunting, and people do see it as a worry, but I honestly, with my experience, I'd say it's not a blocker.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Was there any more questions on that, Scott, that we wanted to cover, or should we jump?
I've got a few lined up, but not for this kind of section, Todd. So I think we can move on if that's okay.
That's cool. Yeah, let's jump on to the next slide. I quite enjoy the questions because it breaks it out. It feels like I'm not going insane talking to myself. It's quite nice. Amazing.
We're all here. We're all here.
Oh, yeah, amazing. So I wanted to put this slide in, right? So I think this is going to sound like a bit of a hard truth, but again, you knowing your why and your non-negotiable is going to really help drive this. So something that I've spoken to lots of people over, recruiting within the F1 world, is that they see the glossy, fun stuff that's on the Sunday coverage. Not always Sunday, sometimes Saturday coverage, but they see it on the coverage. And, you've got to remember only 10% of the race team travel. So there could be a team of 1,000 people, 100 or less of them are going to be the traveling party. So design engineers are not going to every race. They're not drinking champagne with the race winners. That is not the reality. So, I mean, your intention of getting into the sport has to be for the right reason. So again, I don't want to scare people off. What I want them to know is you have to put hard work in. Yes, it will be really rewarding and you'll love it when you're in it, but it isn't drinking champagne and jumping in pools in Miami. That is not what's going to happen. So yeah, just a bit of a flag. Again, the non-negotiables are really going to inform what you're wanting to get out of it. What is your why? What's going to make you want to get up in the morning? Being part of a successful team that everyone knows and celebrates may be enough. It was enough for me for 5 years. So I think it's really important for you to know that. Again, I don't want to discourage people, but I just want to be real with them. I think it's important.
Well, it's interesting as well because that the effort that you're putting, even if you don't go to the races and you're not sharing the podium and champagne with Max, that it's visible, the kind of input that you've had. No matter where you're working in the company, you see the cars go out on track, and it's kind of it just shows the entire work of the company out there. It's very visible, right? I think seeing your product kind of racing around a circuit is awesome. Very cool.
Do you know? I've known people that design various parts, and they're so chuffed when they see it. Bearing in mind you're racing 2 prototype cars right around a track, and people see their part, and they're like, get their family around the TV and be like, I designed that part. That's a great buzz. It is definitely a team sport. So I think that aside from this real talk, there is a real sense of community within it and a sense of one vision. So, I can see why that would be some people's why, for sure. So that's a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on that same side, I mean, the if you do ever manage to get into a role where you are traveling a lot, it isn't quite as glossy fun as you see as well, right? It's great for a bit, and then you kind of think, oh god, I've got to get on another plane, and it's quite difficult. Now I don't want to complain too much. I personally I traveled for a good 3-4 years, but it can get tiring. So do that while you're a bit younger, and then get it out your system, and then you'll be more happy to have a bit more consistency, I would say.
I completely agree with that. I actually come from a music touring background. So again, you go to really cool places, but you see a lot of music venues and hotels. You don't really get
Yeah.
to see the cities you go in. So completely can relate to that. Absolutely. Not so glamorous, but it's great. It's great. I think ultimately, if this is your why and you really want to get into it, go and get it. Go and earn your stripes. Um, can we jump onto the next slide? Is that okay?
Yeah, well, it's opening up the floor for some questions, Todd. No.
How did it go that quick? Amazing.
Well, I think first of all, I just want to, before we jump into the questions, and I've highlighted some here so that we can filter them through. But please feel free to drop any questions in a moment. I just want to kind of say thank you very much, Todd, for that. I know you've still got a lot of value to give, but I mean, the summary for me there, or the biggest takeaway for me there was, like many things, I think, to kind of start small and work your way up. You can find a way to do it. It may not be possible to jump straight into a lead engineer role at an F1 team, but you can certainly step your way there. And if you put the work in and you're, a great candidate, then I'm sure that, you can get your way to those bigger roles that you might be aiming for right now. Okay, Todd, let me just bring up these.
I absolutely love these emojis. I wish my whole life just included this amount of emojis.
So the dopamine's going off in my brain.
That's what it is. Yeah.
So I've got, let me just have a quick look at these. Sorry, guys, give me a second. So, yeah, we've got a question here that I saw again 10, 20 times just about CVs. Like,
Yep.
what are some, fairly basic question, I suppose, but what are some best practices for CVs, and how's the best way to make them stand out?
That's a great question. Again, that's probably going to be another hour on something. But I think if I give quick highlights on that, in all seriousness, so I think CVs for me need to have lots of context and color on them. Okay, so if you are saying you're good at something, explain why you're good at it and give some good situational examples. So I could say, I could have on my CV, I'm great at recruitment, or I can explain that I've worked within the F1 industry and recruited X, Y, and Z and worked with blah, 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 blah. So again, it's all about context. So if you say anything on a CV, if you say you've got great attention to detail, tell me why you've got great attention to detail. If you say that you're good at using SolidWorks, explain to me how many hours you've used and what projects you've worked on using SolidWorks or NX or whatever it may be. So I think lots of context is really important on a CV. That is the problem that I come up against with so many CVs. Problem is, when a recruiter or a hiring manager reviews a CV, if the information isn't there, they make the assumption that you haven't got it. And that is the worst. I've worked with very, very senior people that don't explain themselves on their CV, so aren't getting interviews. And I think just loads of context, loads of personality, make sure the hobbies and interests, as we talked about at the start of the session, really give lots of flavor about how your brain works, what's your why, what's your non-negotiables, what's the best Tom Hanks film, whatever it might be, just give lots of personality on a CV. I think it's important.
I think that also, that kind of giving context around what you're explaining is critically important, because
Yeah.
everyone can say that they've got this certain skill, but really if you add the context to it, then the person on the other side reading it, the HR manager or whoever it might be, you're able to add some personality in there as well.
Yeah.
And it seems more, not honest, but it seems more real when there's context. This is from my personal experience, of course. And I think that's leading on from that. I've seen a lot of questions asking about Formula Student, I suppose, from the many engineers that we have on this call. And yeah, I've actually employed 2 or 3 members of staff over the years that have Formula Student experience, and it's not the only reason, but it's definitely one of the kind of key indicators that I look for. Because if you're motivated enough to get into a Formula Student team and actually work on cars and understand them and be just, motivated by the engineering, that says a lot for the role that I'm looking to fill. And so, it's not just about engineering or Formula Student. There's many different things that you can do around motorsport or design, or whatever it may be.
Complete Formula student's great. So what that would tell me about someone is that they've learned how to interact with people on a technical level. So if you're looking at design engineering or aerodynamics, you're actually able to have that technical conversation with people, but also keep it towards a goal and have fun with it. So Formula student's great for that. That I'd say it's not quite a full stripe, but you're starting to earn your stripes on that one.
Yeah, exactly. It's a stripe indicator, right?
There we go.
Next question here, and you think you've partly answered this already, but someone's asked, while LinkedIn is a great platform to connect and network, but as a recruiter, do you like it, and what do you like when people get in touch with you? Like, what are you looking out for? Because I guess that's one of the first steps before they even get your CV, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some recruiters love it, some just don't like it. I personally love it. I think it's really, really, I like it when people share vulnerable content. I like it when people show informative. For me, I just like the knowledge sharing aspect. I like it when people, as we said, personal messages. Make it personal. Make sure there's a hook in there to make me want to speak to you or be intrigued about what you're asking me about. So yeah, I think it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and then I guess one of the things is like, I don't know how much heads of HR are hanging out on LinkedIn at the F1 teams, or how much time they've got. But to be honest with you, I spend some time on LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
I've reached out to people offering them some work on LinkedIn because there was a copywriter that I reached out to who did some work with us, and it was
Yep.
because he was creating great copywriting content about Formula One, and I'm like, well, he's a great copywriter. He loves the sport. Let's get him to do some writing for us. And again, it kind of harps back to getting out there, getting your hands dirty, actually having some forward momentum with this.
Yep. I actually know who you mean just from what you've just said. So again, the person that's it's not someone I've coached, so I can't take credit for that. But yeah, again, people putting themselves out there, showing what they can do. So the copywriting one's a really good example. If you are a social media person, put out social media posts on LinkedIn, show people what you can do. You know, if you're designing parts and you're a design engineer and you're really proud of it, put it on LinkedIn. Show people. Do a video talking around your SolidWorks project. Why not? I think that would be really interesting. Again, I think it's really powerful for that.
I think that's fascinating, and I think it's kind of personal marketing, right?
Yeah.
Got a question here that kind of has just been answered, but I'll reiterate it. It says, I'm a motorsports engineering graduate. To help with my career and to improve my CV, I've started writing blogs on quali analysis and driver analysis. Do you think that would be useful? I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Again, you're you're putting yourself out there, you're exercising a muscle. So even if it's not engaging, it's still you're still putting data and bringing it to life. So when you talk about it on your CV, you're able to talk about bringing data to life and putting it out there in the public. I think that's really interesting. So definitely, yeah, stuff like that's amazing.
And I think you never know, right? Who sees this content? It
Exactly.
constantly amazes me who watches Driver 61. And when you do stuff like that, when you put your expertise or share something, you're just increasing your chances of being lucky. It's that simple, right? You never know that Todd might have, looked at your data analysis the day before, and then you reach out and it's like, oh, it's that guy who did this. You're already halfway through the door.
Yeah, completely, completely. Yeah, putting yourself on people's radar for the good reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me have a quick look through through the questions. I have a question about how I can contact smaller teams in smaller formulas or championships. How can I contact them for a possible internship or possible experience on a racetrack? Since I suppose experience would be more valuable than actual theory I'm studying in university. Thank you in advance. I don't know if you have experience of that, Todd, because you're working at the blue team. I almost said it, the blue team. Um, but I certainly do. I think it harps back to what we mentioned earlier, right? If you First of all, you've got to, you're selling yourself. You've got to get in touch with these people, but it's not just about sending them an email. It's about getting in touch with them that might not be an email in a kind of different way, but going to them with value, right?
Yep.
Um, I think there's a Warren Buffett quote about a potential intern going to him saying, "I'll work for you for free," and he's saying, "You're already too expensive," right?
Yeah.
You've got to go to, if you're asking for something, you're going to be taking their time, you're going to be taking their expertise. Even if you're willing to do it for free, you've got to show that you're going to be offering them actually, value after the end of your period there.
Completely. So on that, I'd focus on the value add that you're giving. When you have Scott completely bang on. When you have an intern or someone shadowing or doing work experience, it drains resource, because what you're doing is showing someone or taking the focus. And I think that's why it's so hard. You're never going to get trackside F1 work experience, because that's not what they need to do is focus on the actual results and the minute detail and marginal, improvements. So on a smaller team, what's the value you could add by being there? Is it experience or hands-on experience you've had at a karting track, or is it you're going to bring really great biscuits that they like? What is it? Try and work that out and pitch it in that way that you're going to add value to them somehow.
Exactly. I think that makes perfect sense, actually, because if you're going to people with value, you're going to struggle at a Formula One team, because they are so focused. They've got a million people globally, more than that probably, who would work for free or pay them for work.
Exactly.
But if you do that with a smaller team, where you can go in like the mechanic that I spoke to you about earlier, go and wash the wheels and go and get involved, and then slowly you learn and slowly you get more involved, and then you move up to a bigger team and then bigger championship, and then after 5 years, then maybe you're in F1.